evening, wherever you've been listening to us from here on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Krause here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. Hey, I was inspired for today's show by a quote that I saw. I thought was interesting. And it was from the individual who defeated the Knights Templar and retook Jerusalem, therefore reestablishing Islamic rule over the city. And that was Saladin who had accomplished that. And this is not going to be a history lesson, okay? This is not going to be about the Crusades versus the Muslims or anything like that, okay? It's not that. But, very interesting quote here. He said, "If you want to destroy any nation without war, make adultery or nudity common in the young generation." And I was thinking, that's really quite profound on so many different levels. I mean, if you want to destroy a culture, war is not the most efficient way to do it, because it's going to cost you a lot of lives if you go to war with a country. It's going to destroy much of the infrastructure, so you're not going to benefit from the resources that are in the country or the buildings or anything like that. There's other ways to do it. Now, make a little plug here. This actually relates to my sci-fi book that I wrote. It's very dystopian, set in Earth's very distant past, back in the era of Noah, and it's called The Destiny of Our Past. And you can look that up on Amazon, The Destiny of Our Past, in which the elite of the society have embarked on a program to get rid of what they would consider the commoners, in a fairly non-violent way, making it their own decision, basically, to eradicate themselves. Now, the thing is, what I thought I would do is base this program on 10 ways that you could destroy a culture. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons, like I said, not war, and I'm not going to deal with zoning or some of these issues people talk about, for instance, with Agenda 21 and various other land planning programs and so forth. But I want to deal with more of the psychological aspects of how would you, if you wanted to destroy a culture or country, how could you do it using psychology? In the same way that Saladin was basically saying, if you demoralize the culture, if you make adultery and these kinds of things common amongst the young, then you will demoralize the culture. And there's, of course, it goes much deeper than that, and we're going to go deeper than that. So let's just take a look at this, okay? Let's just take a look. And these are in no particular order. Number 1 is not more important than number 10. So let's just go through these and deal with basically how you can destroy someone by making, basically dry up the culture. Now, first of all, I would say the family is based on idea of a continuation of the chain. It's like a relay race. Now think about this as a relay race. All cultures are based on this. You get the baton from your parent, and you start your race. And as you go around, maybe 100, 200 meters, you pass that baton to your children. And then you slow down, and you look behind you, and your parents are getting old, and they're about ready to die. You're middle age, you see your kids, they pass the baton to their kids. You look behind yourself again, your parents are dead now, they're buried. You're getting old, you're starting to look like they did when you first turned around. Your children's children, grandchildren, are starting to get older, and they're about ready to get the baton too, and then they're going to carry that, and it's going to go on, and you're going to die, and it's going to be passed on. That's how cultures continue. Okay, that's the most important thing. Biology is the most important thing in a culture. If you get rid of people reproducing, that's it. But it's not just going around telling people, hey, stop having kids, or life doesn't mean anything, and they'll just accept it. No, you have to do it in subtle ways. Just like Saladin wouldn't say, oh, well, let's tell the people living in Jerusalem that we want to conquer, that they should all go out and commit adultery and run around naked. Okay? That's not what happened. He was just talking about the idea of when you go up against a foe who has adopted some of these things, they're going to be weakened and you're going to be able to conquer them. Now, let's take a look at 10 other things. Oh, one other thing that inspired me about this too. I was talking to someone, hadn't talked to her for years, and she's 30, and I guess her biological clock's starting to really kick in. Very liberal, actually, extremely liberal. I used to debate her a lot when she was younger. And she's with a boyfriend now, long-term relationship, and she wants to start a family. And he's like, well, let's that, let's draw it out. Well, when you're 30 and people are starting to say, that baton, it's going to be a little harder to pass it on. And then I was talking to someone recently, she's older than me, but she has a son who's married to someone, and the wife doesn't want to have kids, but he wants to have kids. Now, I know in an ideal family situation, he would have met the other girl and gotten married and they'd had a big family, but that's not the way it works out. And this happened a lot in modern society. I even talked to someone a while back who, her sister is gay, and she was married to a woman. I'm not sure they are still. I don't think they are. But her sister didn't want to have kids. And the other woman did want to have kids. And so the sister decides, well, let's get some dogs, and maybe get rid of some of that maternal instinct. And, there actually is a term for that called dog mommies. And, when women will, it's like when older women will buy cats. I mean, it's there's a lot talked about it on the internet. You can look up dog mommies or cat ladies or something like that. But it's kind of this idea that you project your maternal drives into an animal. And so forth. My personal opinion is dogs are meant for kids. Children love dogs. So, they're a natural combination. I'm not saying, well, no, don't get dogs. Dogs are great. Kids just love them. But one without the other, I guess it's better to have kids without the dogs than it is to have dogs without the kids, from a biological point of view with regards to your genetics. But anyway, the 10 things. First of all, what I would do if I was trying to destroy a culture, and it's up to you to see if this is what's going on in Western society today. Not just Western, it seems to be a little extended into other areas too. Make sure that heritage is no longer important to the people. Now, in our modern society, we're so caught up in the present. History's boring. I mean, gosh, darn it, public schools make history boring. How many times have you visited a historic site for one reason or another, and you read about it in school when you were in high school, and it was like the most boring, you didn't connect to it. You just wanted to make sure you knew what port this was, where this battle took place or something, and because it was just really boring. It meant nothing to you. And then you actually, later in life, you visit that place, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is actually really interesting. Well, the thing is that when it comes to our history, when it comes to our culture, I wrote an article a while back on, quoting Marcus Garvey when he said, people without a past it's kind of like, if you don't know your past, you're not going to have a future. Okay? And that's true. If the 10 Commandments, the first commandment, I mean, it's not the first one, but one of the big ones, it's the only one that has a promise associated with it, is honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long in the land. And I've explained it before. It's not saying, okay, I do everything my mom said. No, it's basically saying that you respect your heritage. You honor your heritage. And then that means there is a connection to you that then you feel good about projecting it into the future. All right? So it's kind of this idea that if you feel pride about who you are, then it makes more sense to make more of you and extend that pride and those traditions that you can teach your children and so on. I love that some Indian, I think it's a Hopi, that felt like they were responsible for 7 generations after them. You know, that they're not just responsible for how they raise their children or even their grandchildren, but maybe they die and it's their grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren that they're still responsible for because they taught them the right values and ideals. But you got to have pride in where you come from. It doesn't mean maybe your parents were scoundrels, you know, but they did come from a culture, and you should have a certain level of pride for the culture. You know, where you're from. I mean, just because maybe, you know, your parents were horrible but they're Americans, and, you know, maybe you should have a little bit of pride in the fact that maybe their parents weren't so horrible and made all kinds of sacrifices and so forth. But anyway, you've got to have pride in your heritage, because if you don't, then you just kind of like, yeah, whatever, I'm here, and then I die. No big deal. Kind of a nihilistic point of view. The next one, I said this is not going to be in any kind of order of importance, is careerism. Teach the young people that family is something that if it doesn't get in the way of your career aspirations, then go ahead and have a family. Now, there's a problem with that. Most people don't have careers. They have jobs. Career, by definition, means that it's upwardly mobile, there's a competition, it's kind of a pyramid system within whatever job you're in. So essentially, very few people have what you would consider careers. But nonetheless, promote the idea that career is more important, and having that job and getting up in the morning and getting in the car and driving to that job is way more important than getting up in the middle of the night, feeding a baby, getting it ready for whatever in the morning, or getting your kids ready for school. Promote the idea that the career is the best thing. And especially amongst your really talented people, make sure that they believe that career is more important than having kids. Because if you're going by Darwinism, you're going to be weeding those characteristics out even faster if you promote this whole career ideal. So promote careerism as the most important ideal. And, you know, if you have time, maybe when you're like 39, maybe you can pop out a kid or something. But you know, if you're married, I mean, that's going to be a hassle, because what if your job, you have an opportunity to advance in your company, but you have to move to another city, but your husband or wife would have to go to another city. Well, you know, why be burdened with a family, you know? Just, shack up with someone or something. And then when time to break up, then it's much easier. Much more financial security in that. But that's, I don't believe in that, but I'm just saying that is what's taught. Third, and related to this, family is merely a life choice, not a foundational expectation. Now, when I throw in that term foundational expectation, people are like, you know, there's this visceral reaction, like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. You know, and you think, oh, that's the way that they were back in the 50s. You just had to have a family. Well, yeah. If you want to pass on your genes, you've got to have a family. Unless, of course, you're one of those super healthy people, genetically fit. You can go in and be a sperm donor or an egg donor, make a little money on the side, depending on what country you're in, but you're not going to raise those kids. And very, very, very few people actually have those, that health level that they could go in and donate sperm or eggs. So, but ultimately, if you want to pass on your genes, you want to pass on your culture, you want to pass on your religion, because religion is mostly based on, what religion you grow up in. Most people that are Jewish didn't just suddenly, when they were 18 go, hey, I want to be Jewish. Or most people that are Catholic didn't suddenly go, hey, I want to be a Catholic. I was something else before. That's just the way it is. You're born into your religion for the most part. Some people convert out, some people convert in. But any religion's going to survive needs to have enough people born to maintain the original number and then maybe bring some more in. If it's not, it's dying. It's like a lot of the mainstream Christian churches in America. You go in there and you're thinking, oh, well, where am I? Am I in a senior citizen home? Because it's just a sea of gray hair. If there's some function, there's a lot of people at. No young people. So that church eventually, where all these people are meeting, will eventually be sold, maybe, I don't know, bought by some other religion that they tended to have more kids. But in a society, you've got to have a foundational expectation, as much as that sounds bad, as much as it sounds, like some people would say brainwashing. Oh, this sounds like something from some TV show where, fertile women are forced to have kids or something. No, it's not. And it extends to both males and females. Like I said before, the couples, in one, it's the guy that wants to have kids and the girl that doesn't. In the other one, it's vice versa. She wants to have kids and he doesn't. So this has nothing to do with, putting some burden on women. All right? It's a shared thing. In the 1950s, guys were like, well, one of these days I'm going to be a father. And the women were, one of these days I'm going to be a mother. And that meant that people did have families. They weren't in like this angst when they're 35 going, oh my gosh, should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? That sort of thing. It wasn't that way then. It was like, oh, we've got children. All right. Now let's raise them the way that they're supposed to be raised. And for a society to continue, you need that as part of a foundational expectation. Doesn't mean everyone has to do it. But if you have too many that choose not to, you're in trouble. Okay, the next one. Pessimism of the future. Now, you see, this is a problem that often, it's a dilemma for those, especially maybe in alternative media. We tend to be thinking about, okay, look at what's going on out there. Don't you guys realize just how bad things are in reference to wars and the way the media is stacked against people's interest and what multinational corporations are doing and that sort of thing. And it sounds very negative. But really, it's more, there is a difference between informing people and then just telling people life sucks, we're all going to die, type attitude. Pessimism of the future can involve environmentalism that teaches you, that we're all going to destroy the planet Earth and we're all going to die anyway. Or it could be kind of the metaphysical pessimism of nihilism where it's, yeah, you live, you die, then it's all gone and no one cares anymore. Or it can be that cataclysmic, oh, the Earth's going to blow up one. Well, no, it doesn't blow up first. The sun starts to shrink. Water starts to disappear as the temperatures go up on the Earth, and then everything goes totally desert, and then the thing blows up, and then it consumes the Earth. And that'll happen in about 4 billion years. Oh my gosh, I guess there's no reason to go out and get married. Okay, these are kinds of things that are pessimism. And also media, news. I mean, what the media does really is just tell you all kinds of horrible things. Oh, look, a mother in Tallahassee, Florida got mangled by a pit bull or something. Oh, look over here. A bunch of people lost their jobs. Oh, look over here. And it's just, someone got murdered by a serial killer. Oh, look over here. And it's just kind of this negativity that makes you think the world really sucks. And ultimately, think about in your own neighborhood, what would you, if you had your own news show, what would you fill it with? Someone lost their cat. Okay. Someone had a baby born. All right. Or, this is what local news used to be like 100 years ago. Well, Aunt Harriet actually, won the pie contest, this year. And it was kind of a positive thing. I mean, if something bad happened, sure, it got publicity. But a Jack the Ripper kind of thing was only, once in a lifetime kind of stuff happening, or a big war. Now it's just wars and rumors of war. Maybe that's what that Bible scripture means, rumors of war. Because you turn on the news, it's like, North Korea, oh, Syria, Iran, oh my gosh, oh, North Korea again. And people are like, oh, why bother? Then they turn on a science fiction show, and maybe a whole city gets blown up or something. And it's like, pessimism. And that's something that's very negative for society's growth and survival. Oh, let's go into poor health habits. I was just in a discussion with my daughter about this just today. Not that she had the poor health habits. I think maybe in some ways she has better health habits than I do when it comes to diet. The thing is that whether it's intentional, sometimes I seriously have to wonder if there is a conspiracy out there just to get people so obese that their health goes down. I mean, for instance, hey, if people can continue to work but still be obese, they'll die at a much younger age, and therefore the government saves money on pensions. Yeah, maybe there's something to it. Or it seems that there's a lot of people in various organizations and governments that think we're overpopulated, so cuts back on fertility, that sort of thing. But irregardless of the case, if you promote poor health habits, this reduces testosterone in men. It causes people to not maybe be as energized, and that takes up everything. Whether it's going out and finding a mate, if you're just sitting there and you're 35% body fat and you're playing games all day on a computer, you still can get up and work and stuff, but maybe when you get home, you're like, well, my friends are going to go out to the club. No, I'm not going to. I'm just too tired. And, maybe you would have met somebody. I'm not saying the club's the best place to meet, your future husband or wife, but still, I mean, you got to get out there and be active, or you're not going to find someone and get married and have a family and so forth. Plus, you're not going to really care what's going on in the world. Yeah, I've seen that meme, Okay, I've got, it shows like a man in the Revolutionary War era, getting ready to go fight the British, and or says something like, give me liberty or give me death, and then it has this really chubby guy sitting on the couch. He's like, just give me my remote control TV, and I'll be satisfied. Well, that's a way to really reduce a culture. It also can cause health problems and so forth, which means more money has to be spent in the health sector. So, that's money that could have been spent on something else. When you're physically fit and healthy and everything, you just have more energy to do other things, including actually going out and doing something political. But anyway, obsession with entertainment. That's number 7. Obsession with entertainment. Many people live a vicarious life. I talked about the people that buy a cat or a dog to satisfy their maternal drives without actually having a family. But entertainment, if you're sitting there thinking about the family structure and hoping that so-and-so gets married to so-and-so on a TV series, that's kind of pathetic. I'm sorry. I mean, it's a TV series. It's a drama. It's fun to kind of lose yourself momentarily or just sparingly, once in a while in a TV series and so forth. But, to get totally involved in it, and then you start trying to follow the entertainers. I never understood when I was in high school people that followed bands. I mean, if the music's good, fine. I don't care what the lead singer is doing or whatever. It doesn't concern me. Okay? I couldn't care less if, oh my gosh, she's breaking up with her husband, or oh my gosh, so-and-so just caught in an affair with so-and-so. I mean, these kinds of things, this celebrity entertainment stuff, it's superficial, and it creates a superficial society. I don't care about life with some family doing this or that, or, and following them. Okay? It's not interesting. but yet it's made interesting. They try to sell it to us, just like with the poor health habits. Oh, buy this, buy this, buy this. Oh, look at here. We got the, 3-for-1 hamburgers at such and such fast food place or something like that. And it's the same with entertainment. You make it glossy and you make it, look interesting. And that takes people's attention. Well, that's a good way to kind of start eradicating this, kind of that sense of the importance of a culture. You give it a phony culture, a glittery culture. Well, I'd much rather, I remember when I was a kid, they still had like 4th of July parades. I'd much rather take children to a 4th of July parade than to be worried about some entertainment awards thing on TV. It just creeps me out, actually. It's like narcissists, congratulating other narcissists. Okay, and then we get back to what Saladin said about immorality. Well, there used to be an expectation that when you got married, that the person you married was probably fairly sexually inexperienced. And that was true for both males and females. There's this kind of thing that the entertainment industry promotes, that everyone was just doing it anyway. Don't believe all the stuff about the good old days, because, or if it was the good old days, they were like, oh, the guys got away with this, but the women couldn't, and those kinds of things. What were the guys doing, having sex with each other? Or something like that. No, I mean, a lot of that's been overblown. Because if you look at partners per person, and you look at the ages, at least this is stuff I read like back when I was studying human sexuality in college, in my psychology program and stuff. I don't have a degree in human sexuality, but the thing is that I do remember graphs that would say people between the ages of this and this, number of sexual partners. Maybe it was people that came of age in the 40s, and it might be like average 2 or something like that. Then it started going into the 60s. Well, maybe average 3. Or again, this has been a long time ago. I don't know the exact numbers. And then nowadays, it's like, you see these figures of 5, 6, 7, and some people might be like 20% of the population's up there, like in the, they need some sort of Rolodex to keep a track of all the people they've had sex with. But the thing is that when you have that kind of situation, I've heard many young men say, do I really want a woman? Do I want to settle down and marry a woman when she's tired of all, experimenting with all the guys on the block and maybe a few girls at the same time? And females feel the same way. I've never met a girl who's, in movies they make it sound this way, but I've actually never in real life met a young woman who's like, oh, I hope I can find a guy who's had a lot of experience with a lot of women. Okay? You don't find that really in the way people are. But if you have a civilization where you're pushing for people to not get married or get married at an older age, you push the idea that, you've got to experience the world, which is sort of like what? You're going to be traveling all the time as a stewardess? You know what the term means, okay? You're going to experience the world. And so there's this idea that you've got to have, this guy, this girl, this whatever. And then maybe when you're like 30 or something, you settle down and maybe, decide to get married and have kids. But the thing is, a lot of people get really turned off by that idea, and they're thinking, why even bother? Do I want to have a mother who's had 30 different guys? And maybe that's a very, it's a small percentage of the population that could say that, but it still comes out that way. Or a woman's thinking, oh my gosh, who's he thinking of? If he's had 30 different women, and we're being intimate, is he thinking about her or her or those kinds of things? There is a certain amount of security that comes with sexual morality. There really is. And we're not even having to touch on such things as sexually transmitted diseases, many of which sterilize young women, like chlamydia, many of which are actually dangerous and not even curable anymore. Okay, I mean, danger, can kill you. Immorality, also, you wind up in situations where, someone that, gets pregnant. I mean, birth control's not always available at the heat of the moment, or it doesn't work. And then it's like, okay, well, it's going to be an abortion or be a single mother, and those kinds of things. I mean, it's, nowadays it actually sounds like you almost have to apologize, and you shouldn't, for saying that maybe the old ways were better, at least when it comes to creating stable families and expectations and so forth. And again, it's not being sexist, in any way, shape, or form, because males and females both still have this sense that they would like to be special, that special person that they're with and that they're going to spend the rest of their life with. All right? So, promoting immorality it just saps the energy out of a culture. People sit around looking at porn instead of going out and finding someone to, get to know and form a relationship with. And even then, they look at the porn and maybe they're just like, it seems like other people are, they do this and this and this. I mean, it creates this false reality. And yes, everyone knows it's fantasy, but at the same time, it still is something that subconsciously, it must feel a little bit limiting if you've grown up on this stuff, and then you realize, okay, a real person, they have bad breath sometimes, they get diarrhea by, eating at a certain, place, or drinking bad water, or something like that. They get tired, they, get grumpy, I could go on and on and on and on and on. But immorality, and all the things out there from Hollywood to porn to just the culture in general, it's not a good thing. Saladin would look at it now and go, give me my army that I used to have, go take over. It's, I think the culture has really weakened itself, and now it's turning into a worldwide thing where, this kind of immorality will extend itself because of our media and so forth. Of course, there are some regions of the world and some countries that will prevent this to a certain degree, but with the internet, it's really hard to do. Number 9, consumerism. There's so many people that the idea of maybe having a third child if they have 2, and then realizing, we'd have to buy a van. That's not cool. Doesn't look as cool to be driving a van. Or maybe we won't be able to get a new car this year. Or maybe it's harder to travel. I knew a guy who loved kids. In fact, he had actually, he and his first wife had broken up over the fact that she wouldn't have kids. She refused. She did not want to have kids, and he really wanted some. And then he married someone who really did want kids, and they were going to stop it too, because they were both really into travel, and they were thinking, how can we travel if we have more than 2 kids? Now, they did eventually, decide, okay, let's have a third. and they had a third child. But they had stopped for quite some time, because they were worried that it could hamper their travel plans. But consumerism itself, everyone has to have this kind of room, this kind of house, this kind of car, these kinds of clothes, these kinds of new gadgets, and so forth. And what is the one thing that is said that is the option? The one thing that people say, maybe you should skip doing this in order to afford all of that. Yeah, that's right. Children. If you've got 1 kid, maybe it's like, are you sure you want another one? If you have 2 kids, are you sure you want another? If you have 3 kids, it's like, oh my gosh, how could you possibly want another kid? Okay? And this is thrown out there because our society, and yes, it comes across even in the mega churches, the whole consumerism, do you have as expensive a suit as the person next to you? What, is my car looking junky compared to the BMW that's on one side and the Mercedes that's on the other? And so people start, people look at it like, okay, the one discretionary thing, you can't stop eating, you want to have that one special house, and you got to have that new car, and you got to have those new fashion, is children. Okay, and that's where consumerism is very negative towards culture. Because, hey, people start cutting back. And people will say, well, yeah, but it costs so much money. And then you say, yeah, but you live on top of the hill, and you've got like a huge 5,000 whatever square foot home and all this kind of stuff, and you're saying that you can't afford kids. Usually it's actually the people that are the ones that can most afford kids who cut back the most, versus the people that you could make a serious case that maybe they should cut back on the number of kids they have, and they have more. There's an irony there. It's the expectation. A lot of times, though, people make excuses. Oh, well, yeah. And we live in it's been since the early 20th century. Consumerism has been our religion. I'm surprised they don't have product placement in churches in America nowadays. Here's up on this altar or something like this, some sort of clothing brand listed or something. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this, because then it's going to start a trend, and pretty soon churches are going to have sponsorships, like at sports stadiums, for local teams and so forth. But anyway, consumerism, not a good thing for a society. Plus, it actually cuts back on what I said about number one, heritage, because a consumeristic society tends not to care about where they came from. They care about what they look like. And that's an important distinction. Finally, and this may be one of the more important. Now, I said, that nothing's more important than the other. And that is magnify the perceived antagonisms between the sexes. Now, it's always been that men have always kind of like looked at women like, oh, that's what the women are. That's how they are going to behave. And the women are looking at guys like, oh, yeah, that's how the guys are. And there's kind of this almost like it used to be kind of a friendly rivalry. I wish guys weren't so loud. Well, I wish, the women would be doing this or that. And it wasn't a real negative, almost hatred. But, it seems that that's the way it is now. And then you take something that should have started out, when we talk about sexual harassment and things like that. And just, we know, usually most of us have an idea of what sexual harassment is. But then you make things very vague, and you get like someone on TV going, oh yeah, he asked me out on a date, and I didn't want to go out on a date. And he said, are you sure? Well, that's when I turned him into human resources, and those kinds of things. If we have an antagonism where people start feeling that way, then pretty soon when we do get sex robots that are like humans, people are going to be like, I'm just going to buy a robot. Who cares about, putting up with this? And you also create something like, you always have that phrase, nice guys finish last. Well, if you have this kind of antagonism taking place all the time, you're going to wind up with, psychopaths are going to be the ones having kids. Because, they'll find a way to do it. They don't care what people think. Whereas the nice people, nice guys are not going to be asking the nice girls out. And, nice girls are going to be scared of the guys and so forth. We have too much antagonism between the sexes. We should support one another. We're all human beings. I mean, sheesh, you came out of your mother. If you'd wound up with an X chromosome and an X chromosome, you'd have been female. If you'd have with a Y chromosome, X chromosome, you'd have been male. It was whichever sperm went in there did the trick. But you're still, if you're female, your brothers and vice versa, brothers, sisters, came out of the same womb. Same species, okay? Same species. Complementary, okay? We gotta get along with one another, come together, and create families. And so if you have this kind of thing where there's this kind of, there's this like war going on. Reminds me of, there's like one scripture in the Bible talking about, latter days, men versus women and parents versus children and all that kind of stuff. And maybe we're heading there, or maybe we're already there. I don't know. But it's much better for a male and a female to be thinking to themselves, we're in this together and we're fighting together. We have each other's back. Than it is for, well, what is she thinking? Oh, well, what is he thinking here? I don't trust them, and that sort of thing. And I'll tell you something, all these TV shows you've got on, especially in the daytime, oh, gosh, husbands that kill their wives, wives that kill their husbands, kids that kill their parents, types of TV programs, or talk shows where it's just like, don't you put up with this or this or this, and oh my gosh, you mean your wife did that, or your husband did that? And, people start thinking, yeah, well, my husband didn't do that, but it was pretty close. And, you get into this kind of being riled up by the idiot box / TV set. And I think that's a really major problem. Men and women who are mean to each other or who really are out for no good. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of them, and avoid them at all costs. But most men and most women are not out to destroy each other. All right, it's a small percentage that you have to worry about. The vast majority are just regular people who, I think, if people can find enough in common with each other, they can make it work. But that's not the message of our society. Okay? And we have all 10 of these things going on at once. And you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, how can a society survive? Well, it's simple. Be part of social units, subcultures that don't believe in these things. Yeah, I'm making an endorsement for religion. There's a lot of religions that do not believe in this stuff. There's a lot of others that are kind of like, oh, look at our religion. We got this huge giant hall, and every Sunday we have 6,000 people, and we have a great time, and then everyone goes home, and pretty much they're indistinguishable from any other people in the society. But you've got to find subgroups. I'm not saying all of those 6,000 people are that way, but there's quite a few. But you got to find subgroups that you agree with. And if you disagree, you got to get out of them and get into some subgroups that, have values that you support and are supportive of the culture itself. And you may be thinking, well, yeah, but maybe there's not people out there that agree with me. I kind of noticed that there is a certain level of when people meet one another and they find out, oh, you have these values, that suddenly they're going, I kind of wish I could be that way. I think we're not genetically programmed to be hedonistic and selfish and nasty and brutish. I'm sorry, I don't think we're genetically programmed that way. Now, I don't think, on the other hand, that we're genetically programmed to be like these super, empathetic, wonderful, oh, I'll do anything for you type people. We're somewhere in between. You've got to have a little bit of the yin and a little bit of the yang, you got to have a little bit of the shadow and the light, as Carl Jung would say, too. But ultimately, human beings are pretty neat. And I think every culture has something that's really valuable. But to tell you something, if you have a culture that's totally bought into these 10 things that I'm talking about, or even most of them, yeah, I think, Saladin would say it's not got very long to go. And doesn't even have to go by war. It can just kind of wither away and be replaced with people who do have those values. That's just the way nature has been. And culture, like I said with the relay race analogy, that's the way it works. So unless we get some of these people in biotechnology or robotics that can extend lifespans for hundreds of years, we're stuck with this paradigm to have to live with. So think about that. Think about that when you're thinking about, well, would I sacrifice myself to defend my country? And most people are like, yeah, I would do that. Well, then you got to ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice to continue your culture, to continue your country, continue your religion, and so forth? You know, I mean, if you're thinking, well, no, I can't do that, well, then, you know, it'll just be a few decades before there's no need for you to ask that question what you would do, because there won't be anything left. Anyway, that's all the time we have now for this part of the show. I encourage people to examine these issues, think about them, debate them in your mind, see if what I'm saying is true or not.